And again, apologies, I'm not that great a reader, so. In this book, my brothers gave to my father in 1961, and he used to read me out of it. What else out of it? Okay, where is it? Okay. The Ballad of Blasphemous Bill. I took a contract to bury the body of Blasphemous Bill McGee. Wherever, whenever, whatsoever manner the death he died. Whether he died night or day, peak-faced moon, in a cabin dance hall, a camp or dive, mucklucks or patent shoon, on the velvet tundra, virgin peak, by glacier draw or drift, in muskeg hollow canyon gloom, by avalanche, fang or claw, by battle, murder, or sudden wealth, or pestilence, hooch, or lead. I swore on the book I would follow and look till I found my tombless dead. For Bill was a dainty kind of a cuss, and his mind was mighty sot, in a dinky patch of flowers and grass in a civilized boneyard lot. Where he died or how he died, it didn't matter a damn, so long as he had a grave with frills and a tombstone epigram. So I promised him, and he paid the price in good gold Chicacoo coin, which the same I blowed the very night down in the tenderloin. Then I painted a 3-foot slab of pine, here lies old Bill McGee, and I hung it on my cabin wall, and I waited for Bill to die. Years passed away, and the last one day a squaw came by with a strange story of a long deserted line of traps way back in the Bighorn Range, and of a little hut by the Great Divide, and a white man, stiff and still, lying there by his lonesome self. I figured it must be Bill. So I thought of the contract I'd made with him, and I took it down from the shelf, a swell black box with a silver plate he picked out himself. I packed it full of grub and hooch, and I slung it on the sleigh. Then I harnessed up my team and dogs and off it by dawn of day. You know what it's like in the Yukon, and when it's 69 below, and the ice worms wiggle their purple heads through the crust of the pale blue snow, when the pine trees crack like little guns in the silence of the wood, and the icicles hang down like tusks under the parka hood, when the stovepipe smoke breaks off sudden-like, and the sky is weirdly lit, and the careless feel of a bit of steel burns like a red-hot spit, when the mercury is frozen in a ball, and the frost fiend stalks to kill. Well, it was a day just like that when I set out to look for Bill. Oh, the awful hush that seemed to crush me down on every hand, and I blundered blind in a trail to find through the blank and bitter land, half crazed, half dazed in the winter wild, with the grim, heartbreaking woes, the ruthless strife for the grip on life only a sourdough knows. North by the compass, north I pressed, river, peak, and plain. Past like a dream I slept to lose, and I waked up and dream again. River and plain and mighty peak, and who could stand unawed? Their summits blazed that they could be undazed at the foot of the throne of God. North by the land across, shunned by the scouring brutes, and all I heard was my own harsh word and the whine of the Malamutes. Till at last I came to a cabin square built on the side of a hill. I burst in the door, and there on the floor, frozen to death, was Bill. Ice-white ice like a winding sheet, sheathed the smoke-grimed wall. Ice on the stovepipe, ice on the bed, ice on the gleaming wall. Sparkling ice on the dead man's chest, glittering ice in his hair. Ice on his fingers, ice in his heart, ice in his glassy stare. Hard as a log and trussed like a frog, with his arms and legs outspread, I gazed in the coffin, and I brought for him, and I glazed at the gruesome dead. At last I spoke. Bill liked his joke, but still, God darn his eyes, a man ought to consider his mates by the way he goes and dies. If you ever stood in an Arctic hut in the shadow of the pole with a little coffin 6 by 3 and a grief you can't control, Have you ever sat by a frozen corpse that looks at you with a grin and it seems to say, you may try all day, but you'll never get me in? I'm not a man of a quitting kind. I never felt so blue. So I sat there gazing at the stiff and studying what to do. Then I rose and kicked off the husky dogs that were nosing round about, and I lit a roaring fire in the stove, and I started to thaw Bill out. Well, I thawed and thawed for 13 days, but it didn't seem no good. His arms and legs were stuck out like pegs, as if they were made of wood. Till at last, I said, it ain't no good use. He's frozen too hard to thaw. He's obstinate, and he won't lie straight, so I guess I'll have to saw. So I sawed off poor Bill's arms and legs and laid him snug and straight in the little coffin he picked himself with a dinky silver plate. I came near to shedding a tear as I nailed him safely down and stowed him away on my Yukon sleigh and started back to town. So I buried him in the contract as the contract in the narrow grass and deep, where there he's waiting for the great cleanup when the judgment sluice heads sweep. And I smoke my pipe and I meditate by the light of the midnight sun. And sometimes I wonder if it was an awful thing I'd done. And I sit, and as I sit, when the parson talks, expounding on the law, I often think of old poor Bill and how hard he was to saw.
That was a good one.
Yeah.
You can't do that today. You can't just saw someone up.
But they would, the boys, if they were real hot,